It is such a pleasure for me to have the chance to spend a few minutes talking with my good friend and just a remarkable woman leader in the media. And she is, of course, Paula Kerger, the president and CEO of PBS, the Public Broadcasting Service. Paula, I think, I think back over the 15 years, it's all been interesting, it's all been challenging, but nothing more challenging than what you've had to deal with during this pandemic.
I think for all of us, this has been such an extraordinary time. I feel that in everything that I've learned through my entire professional career, I've tried to take little pieces of all of it to help inform how to manage during this period. And in some respects, it's been tremendously liberating to be able to sort of look at the work ahead of us and know that there is really no limits to what we can't try to do, because we're in this period where we have a lot of grace and allowance to look a little different and to really put our work together in a way that, again, 2 years ago, we wouldn't have thought.
No, it's absolutely true, Paula, because you're right. For all the tough moments, the sadness, the struggles of this pandemic, it has given us opportunities. I think we've seen things in ways that we never thought we would. You're absolutely right. I anchored from home for a little more than a year during the first part of the pandemic. I am now back in the studio, at least for part of the day, and then to anchor. But as you just mentioned, it's given us a chance to bring people onto the program, and that has allowed us to talk to them in the place where they are. And it's the kind of thing we wouldn't have typically accepted. We now are accepting of many more visual kinds of different backgrounds, different quality. We're willing to put up with a little sound interference from time to time, just like my phone ringing a minute ago. Yeah. So that's happened. But Paula, one thing I really want to talk to you about is how PBS in the beginning pivoted almost immediately to think about its role in education. And when we realized that children weren't going to be able to go to school in person, PBS stepped in and thought about what its role is, and you played a huge role in doing that.
I remember it was actually in February, I got a phone call from Austin Butner, who was then the superintendent of LA Unified, the school system there, the largest school system in the country. And they happened to own a public television station. And he called to say, we are following very closely this COVID circumstance, and I am concerned that our children may be out of school for a period of time, and I'm particularly concerned about children that may not have access to broadband as we try to, continue the educational process in a remote way. And so our stations very quickly began to come together, beginning with our LA station, and the San Francisco station joined them, working with our team. And then eventually stations across the country began to look at not just what we would be offering up through learning media, which, by the way, went from 1 million teachers using a month to 4 million within a period of like 4 weeks, and using broadcast as a way to deliver classroom lessons directly to families and to homes. And so that was one area that we leaned in, obviously working closely with Judy's team at NewsHour and with everyone else in really thinking about how we were bringing much needed information to the public as people were struggling to try to figure out what all this means. It was all moving very quickly. We had a lot of content that we developed, but we also had this extraordinarily rich archive of documentaries and other programs that could help bring an understanding and a context and historical perspective to how we got to this point. I said to the PBS team at the time and to our stations, we were built for this moment. All of the work that we've done over the years, and all of the relationships that we built, and the content that we developed, and the way that we bring that content to the public, I think all came to the fore. And for me, as I look at what has been a extraordinarily difficult period on so many different levels, I think there was so much that was learned that I hope as we look forward, instead of just putting this last 20 months in the rearview mirror, that we truly pay attention to those, particularly those ideas of innovation that we experimented with, and continue to build on it, because I think that will in fact create the foundation for the PBS and the public broadcasting service of the future.
I'm thinking about so many things from what you've said about keeping going, and back on the point about schools and schools closing. And this, of course, is a program that the Alliance, that the Gracies are all about. It's about women. And I think of how women have been impacted in this pandemic. More women have left their jobs by far than men. And so much of that is because they're the caregivers. They're the ones who are expected to be at home, holding the family together. If children can't go to school, someone needs to be there with them. And workplaces haven't always been accommodating. So I think of Paula's leadership at PBS. Paula, you've had to think about this. The workforce at PBS, we've had to think about it at the NewsHour. It's become part and parcel of what we do as we think about, how we have a workplace that serves women and helps women continue to grow and progress in their careers.
And it's look, this is such a profoundly interesting time now as we look forward, because we're also looking at yet another revolution, which is a whole change in what is the workplace of the future. And one of the aspects of the last 20 months that for me has been, very complicated, and I am not alone. I know I've talked to a lot of different leaders that are wrestling with these same questions, is how do you look at a workplace that really does empower everyone? One of the complications of working in a Zoom environment, for want of a better description, is that you lose a little bit of that glue that ties organizations together if you don't have any opportunity for that face-to-face. And so when we suddenly were in a Zoom environment, there was one aspect that was actually quite personal, which is we got to see glimpses of people's lives. We saw the areas around where the screens were set up. We saw children running through, or pets. So part of that is actually, I think, important in the relationship building, but it also made it very difficult to stay close to how people were really doing. And I think for a lot of people, and particularly for a lot of women, there has been an enormous toll in these last 20 months as people have tried to keep it all glued together, particularly those that had children at home or had other caregiving responsibilities. And I think that for people that are managing, for people that are leading organizations, it is so profoundly important to pay attention to what people are saying to you and also what they're not saying to you. And so I think as we move into this next phase, and this is, I think, again, as I feel like we're making all of this up as we go, we're going to learn from each other. How do we create a new environment where we're able to blend those two pieces of having the in-person collaboration with people that have a bit more flexibility, and how that will play out? I think we will all figure out, certainly in the next year to come. What I really worry about as we wrestle with this new environment is also, particularly as women are wrestling with these choices, is things like mentorship, and how opportunities are created for people who are making different decisions, and how to really think about that. You're an extraordinary mentor. I look at this team that you've assembled at the NewsHour, and it is just it is so impressive to see this great group of people that surround you. But how do you think about that? How do you think about how we will manage some of this when, we may have some combination of people in and out?
Paula, you asked about mentorship. It is harder during the pandemic because we're not together, and having frankly, a heart-to-heart talk with somebody on a Zoom or on a phone call, it's not quite the same. It still can work, still important to keep up those connections, but it's not quite the same. And we have to, I think, work even harder. I know I've been making a note to myself in the last few days that I've got to make an appointment to go sit down in person with some of my colleagues who I just haven't had a chance to see. We've all been so busy. We've been at home. Some of them have been on the road. But it's so crucial that we do that. I was thinking about this the other day in another context, but when I was coming along as a reporter years ago, decades ago, there really were not women mentors for me. Most of my mentors happen to be men because there just were so few women doing the kind of work that I wanted to do. And fortunately, there were some men mentors, but I want to make sure going forward that there's no shortage of women mentors and that we do reach out, because it hasn't always been the case. I don't know what it was like for you coming along, whether you found there were plentiful women mentors, but my sense is that we're doing better at it now, and we could be doing even better than we are right now.
My experience is the same as yours. I actually, if I go all the way back to business school, when there were, I remember one class in particular. You can tell this was a scarring experience because I'm still talking about a moment from when I was sitting in a banking class with one other woman in the class, and I was trying to ask the professor a question, and finally he was exasperated and said, "I don't know why I'm wasting my time with you. You're only here to find a husband." I'm not that old, and I just, when I was coming up, there was not an abundance of women. And actually, to be honest, there were a few women that I looked up to who really were not as helpful as some of the men, which is also an interesting thing. I talk a lot to younger people. We have a lot of our public television stations that are on university campuses. So I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with journalism students and other students. And I feel even at the early parts of our careers, we owe it to those that come up behind us to create opportunities and to share what we're learning through this whole experience.
So Paula, this is your moment. What final message do you want to leave this Gracie's audience with?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you on 70 years. I mean, this is it's extraordinary, everything this organization has done, and just the network it creates and the support it provides is really fantastic. And so I just want to say, most of all, just thank you.
Well, thank you both. I love how you ended that with that comment, because one of the things we've talked a lot about, and one of the reasons why I love serving this organization, as I say a lot, which goes to everything you all were just talking about. Imagine the courage that it took for women to sign an organization like this into existence 70 years ago.